What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 443 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. Joining me, per usual, is my main man, my main squeeze, Mr. Alex. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good.
I didn't let you say your hello. I messed it up already.
It's okay. People have heard it.
I'm glad.
100 times, so it's okay.
It's true. I made a compilation once. Remember that? So every year when Alex does his medleys, he puts together, he listens to all of our episodes throughout the year, and he puts together compilations of like the best, funniest, most insightful moments. And the hours that he puts into this are monumental. I don't envy him. And then one year I was like, I'm going to make my own thing. And I spliced together every time Alex said hello in the beginning of every episode. And even then I was like, God, this takes so long. I hate this. And that was editing 1 second out of 12 episodes. So 24. But anyways, where was I? We have an episode to do. We're joined by two people who are waiting for me to shut up. One of them, actually, they're both old friends. One of them is a very old friend. One of them is a newer old friend. First off is a reoccurring old friend, Mr. Will. Will, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a while, but I'm excited because typically the stuff that we talk about when you come on are things that I don't get to talk about very often. And this is going to be one of those instances. We are also joined by another friend of the show, the creator, founder, the everything pretty much of Fake Theme Park, Mr. Jason Ginsburg. Jason, thank you again for coming on and joining us.
Hello, gentlemen. I believe this is my third time.
This is number 3. It's pretty crazy. We first talked to you back in March of 2019. So almost, 3 years ago. I had to do quick math in my head. And I got a little sad just because time has no meaning anymore. And then we talked to you in June of 2020, right around your 10-year anniversary of founding Fake Theme Park. There is some news surrounding Fake Theme Park, which we're going to get to. Trust me, we're going to be getting to the breaking news. It's very similar to kind of what we got going on here for kind of little spoilers there. We're going to be getting to that momentarily. First, Alex, I kind of want to throw this to you because you have masterminded this whole meeting of the minds. Alex pitched this to me as like, hey, what do you think about doing this? And I was like, you are a machine. I don't know how you come up with this stuff, but anyways, what are we doing today? What are we starting with?
Jason's last time on, once we ended that show and we're still chatting afterwards, somehow it comes up. He goes, "Oh yeah, I also did the tour for Universal Monsters, and I'm a big fan of monsters and all that. So anytime I want to talk about that, Jason said he'd be down for it." And I go, "What?" And like, it wasn't the season for it. I think it might have been just afterwards. And I was like, this is the perfect moment for Will to come back on too. And it's something we would normally do in around Halloween. That's when people look for spooky things, horror movies, classic, exactly that vein. And I was like, well, with what Jason has going on, with what we're doing, why not? This is the perfect time before things come to a close. So let's get some of our favorite horror people together, not knowing Jason's a big horror fan. So we're doing that today.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that my horror knowledge and passion ends around 1955. So beyond that, I am a chicken. I do not know. We were talking about Scream earlier. That's a film I have no experience with. I hate to say any version of it. So I'll be happy to talk about, yes, the Universal monsters, the classic monsters. Beyond that, will best me at any trivia or not. I like to learn. So
what I do sometimes is I just validate each of our guests to each other and be like, I'm going to help my friend here flex for a second. And this is what he knows. So that's what the Scream part was. But yeah, clearly, like we know the classics, and we knowing the roots and the history is something we're usually interested in, and so now we get to talk about that a bit. So, what could you explain to us or let us know, like how long did you do that tour for, and what I've never taken it, so I'm not sure what that would entail.
Right, like what happens on it?
Yeah, this is a famous Universal Studios tour. I mean, for a long time, it was called the Backlot Tram Tour until the company realized a lot of visitors around the world don't know what the word backlot means or what the word tram means. So now it's just the Universal Studio Tour. This is the one in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. It is the real one. I know, believe me, I know Orlando is better in 20,000 different ways. It's just bigger. But the one in LA is the actual working movie studio. It's been there since 1912. It was founded in 1915. People could come in and start watching, which is the whole idea of the tour back then. Back then, films were silent, so people could eat and cheer for the good guy and boo the bad guy and make all the noise they wanted. So the tour is an extension of that, basically. And I gave that tour, the regular tour that most people know, which is a 4-car tram, a giant diesel engine, 174 people. And you go see real movie sets that are actually totally real, used in movies like a Courthouse Square from Back to the Future or the Bates Motel and the House from Psycho. Those are real. They were shot on location there on the lot. And then things that are, we call them animations, where things happen to you on the tram, like Jaws attacks you and the earthquake and things like that are where you get the chance to act as a tour guide and not just relate information or play videos on the screens, but also get a chance to interact with some of the things happening on the tour. So that's fun. So that's where I get the big tour everyone knows. And then there's also VIP tours, which still exist to this day, which are kind of like first class, where you have about 15, 20 people and have a smaller vehicle, and you get off the vehicle and walk around the back lot. You can touch the sets and take pictures. We go inside not just the back lot, but the front lot. So you go inside the sound department and the prop department and a working sound stage. Half the time it's empty, but occasionally you get a chance to go into a commercial set or a TV set. So that is what I gave, is the famous studio tour that everyone is thinking of in LA. That's the one.
So was there like the Universal Monsters subsection to that, or were you around?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I missed it. Yeah, this part of that, the area is called Little Europe. It is still there. I think they possibly making changes to it because there's just not a need for it anymore. Back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, the filmmakers were not going to Europe. A lot of these monster films, as one knows, were half of them were B movies. Very few of them were prestige films, so no one was flying to Europe for any of these things. So everything, London for the Wolfman, Bavaria for Frankenstein, Transylvania for Dracula, all were this pretty small area of the Universal backlot. And most recently, if you want to think, what does it look like today? The Good Place, of all things, was there. All those exteriors, the Good Place, where they're just out eating yogurt and walking around. That's Little Europe. Believe it or not. Now, it doesn't always look spooky. It just looks like Europe. And they have, of course, they've changed the various set dressing to make it look sort of generic, like the afterlife, I guess. So yeah, that part of the tour was you were driving through where the monsters really did walk and got their start. That's on the back lot. And then, of course, the interiors were in the sound stages. The biggest one is stage 12. It's the biggest stage on the Universal lot. The castle in Dracula and the lab in Frankenstein are both built inside there. And you can imagine that, especially the height of those sets, you need something really grand. So the biggest stage on the lot was there. Also, stage 28 was used for Phantom of the Opera. Actually, the Phantom of the Opera House sets were built into the soundstage, so they could not be removed. They were used for the silent version, 1940s version that was in color, and various other dance hall scenes and movies after that. And unfortunately, it was right next door to what was Backdraft and the World of Cinema and Magic. When that all became Transformers, stage 28 was torn down. A historic set, and Universal claims they have somehow removed the Opera House sets and preserved them. No one has seen them. You think this would be a big PR announcement to show here they are somewhere in some museum somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a photo. No photos have emerged. So I don't know if they actually were saved. That's a real piece of history that I understand the park had to expand. Because on the lower lot of the theme park, you are very close to the real studio. I mean, the trams go right by there, Jurassic Park and what is now Transformers. So those are some of the sound stages, interiors, and then the exteriors are Little Europe. We've seen by everyone today who goes on a tour.
It's somehow, as you're naming places, it never occurred to me, or I never really needed to geographically understand that Frankenstein took place in Bavaria.
Yes, well, he's German. The name is pretty German.
It's as you're explaining it, it just feels so painful to think like something historic like that, and it has a lot of meaning, and it gave rise to so many other things. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna move that or take it down to do something with Transformers. Like, I would just hate for like, yeah,
of all things.
Something Michael Bay farted out, and then it's like, we have to annihilate everything that came before just to make room for this ride or this other thing.
I do want to say I have no evidence the Universal has destroyed those sets. I have no evidence that they have preserved them. We're awaiting some kind of confirmation either way.
That's the kind of conspiracy stuff that I love, though. You know, like, oh, they say they saved them. Well, where are they? Where, you know, the harmless. I like the harmless conspiracy stuff, not the kind that gets people murdered. But
well, I mean, I'm devastated because not just the on-screen presence of it, but the connection to the actual Paris Opera House. If I understand right, Laemmle Sr. went, and you know, when he was at the Opera House with the author and loved it, and they brought, I think, architects over who like knew it inside and out to recreate things on that set. You know, from the Opera House to the catacombs underneath it, and so it wasn't like they just dreamt it up and made it. It was painstaking to recreate it, if I remember right. So it's you know, a screen used prop is cool, but it's also like just the amount of work and detail that went into replicating it is phenomenal to me. So it's gut wrenching that it's just like you know, like Alex said, and now here's Transformers.
Now I'm sad.
But it was. But when I took the guests, as we call them, off the trolley, we could go in various parts of the back lot depending on the route and what time we had, and even the interest of the guests. And when I get a chance to walk around the little European sets, it was still a thrill for me. I mean, I was at Universal in some form for almost 10 years, and still walking around those sets it never got boring. That wasn't the boring part of the job. There were boring parts of the job, but the idea of walking around and seeing Courthouse Square from the Back to the Future trilogy, how can that not be just thrilling every single time? So the little European sets, because you can see them, watch the film and go, yeah, that archway. I know that archway is in like 5 different movies because they just use the same sets. I think even a bit bigger back then, but it's not in a very large area.
What was your, I mean, were you a fan of Universal and horror before doing the tours? Was it hard for you to do the first tour and then not like, you know, geek out a little bit? Or did you develop that love from giving the tours?
No, it did. Excellent question. It did come first. My father is a movie buff of all ages. He's kind of guy that can recite every Best Picture winner over the last, somewhere in the 90-year range now, aren't we? So, yes, I used to watch it with him because they were safe, as you know, they're sort of safe for kids. They're not scary horror movie. Yeah. They probably did scare me, but so I watched it with him growing up, and then eventually, when I worked on the lot, we had an employee store that had DVDs of all the weird sequels. You get a DVD of like just Ghost of Frankenstein and Son of Frankenstein together, or just Mummy's Hand and Mummy's Curse and things like that were just back to back. So I would get those as gifts for him. And of course, I bring it to him, and then he'd want to watch them as we watch them together. So I watched all the classics with him originally on cable or VHS and then DVD. And then when I had access to these weird films for cheap, all the spin-offs, which are, there's quite a range of quality in the sequel. Some are great and some are bizarre and weird and bad. So things like Dracula's Daughter and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, I watched them with him more recently, more in the 90s and the early 2000s. So that he really what started me off on the love of the monsters.
That's great.
What about you, Will? What was because I know you have introduced me to a lot of horror. You actually showed me, like, the first time I ever saw a Friday the 13th movie from start to finish was at your house. How did you get into the scary stuff?
I think I was just born weird. I don't know. I don't know. I always liked horror movies and the macabre, and we had growing up, we had pinball machines in my basement, and the one that didn't work my entire life was the Haunted Mansion, and it was this 3-floored pinball machine, and I don't know, maybe it was the desire to want to play that it, you know, it was something I couldn't obtain, so I started branching out into more horror movies. I don't really know, but I definitely started with the Universal horror movies at a younger age over you know, any of the more modern slashers, just because it was more attainable as a younger kid. But definitely there were parts that did scare me and freaked me out, even when they are sort of you know, tamer by today's standards. And a lot of it, you know, the Phantom's face definitely freaked me out. I think the way that it freaked out generations when the Silent Phantom came out. So it was just interesting. And then I think every year for Halloween, my first year for Halloween trick-or-treating, I was Big Bird. And then every year after that, I was Dracula. So,
oh, wait.
Little bit of a jump.
Did you have a specific Dracula that you were?
Bela Lugosi, for sure.
Okay.
There wasn't any other vampire or Dracula in my mind. It's just him.
I had explained this to JR years ago when I made him watch Monster Squad. And I was like, anytime I dressed up as Dracula, I was the Monster Squad Dracula.
Which is arguably more Bela than any. And, you know, I mean, if you really get into the vampire lore, you have savage hunter vampires, then your classic Bela. I mean, he's even different than in the novel. In the novel, he's kind of, if I remember right, he's got a mustache and he's a little bit more gruff. And because of the stage play that originally they took the novel and they turned it into a stage play first, and they much more to keep the money down, and they made it more about dialogue and gothic and romance rather than the excitement of the novel at the time, just to portray it on a stage as more of like oh, this is happening in a manor house sort of thing. And that's where this iteration really was born out of. And so many people, when you ask them to you know, do an impression of a vampire, do an impression of Dracula, they're doing Bela Lugosi. So many of them are spawned from him. He's really, you know, an icon with it. And then to break out of that mold and go to more savage Lost Boy vampires and that sort of like is kind of breaking that mold.
Jason, do you have a favorite
version of Dracula
or monster in general? I wasn't sure if there's like if you favor Frankenstein over Wolfman or.
Yeah, that's a tough call. I think for some, I have an affinity for the Wolfman. I don't know why. I can't point to anything, to be perfectly honest. I think Frankenstein is the king of the Universal monsters. He just, in terms of, I mean, I know Bela is iconic in so many ways, but just the image of Frankenstein is known so much around the world. I think he was more sympathetic. He was in more films. So that he's the number one. It just can't be denied. But something about the Wolfman, I don't know what it is that I was the first one I got on DVD was when I went to the Universal store and DVDs first became a thing. I was on the lot and went to the employee store. The Wolfman was the first thing I bought. I'm not sure why, but yeah, I'm a fan.
I'm curious what Jason. I'm going to start with you first, and I also want to get Will's opinion on in terms of the classics and the general public's obsession, or I don't know what the right word is, with remaking stuff, cashing in on stuff that has already existed and redoing it, remaking it, packaging it for a new thing. I believe, wasn't the Tom Cruise Mummy movie supposed to like launch a whole series of classic horror revamps or something? Do I have that right?
You're asking
horror
Will to get
universe.
very angry. You're going to make Will angry.
Yes. I am. You know, you got to give the people what they want. But Jason, what's your opinion on the remaking of stuff like this? Do you think that it's healthy, or do you feel like maybe you know, kind of leave them alone?
It's yes, I have many thoughts on that. I do have a background in film as well. I've written about that. I've written articles about the monsters all over the place, including things like Van Helsing and the Dark Universe. which were attempts to modernize the monsters. It's tough. They are beloved. It's hard to recreate something that is of its era. It exists. To make it, you lose exactly what made it so great in the first place. Sort of the fact that it was all done for the first time. The fact that it was in black and white. Any monster movie today, except for the first 8 minutes of Van Helsing, which was in black and white, which was awesome, a very nice homage. But right away, you have the Hammer films are the same problem. Wait a minute, now you can see the blood. Now the blood's red. Well, now what color is Frankenstein? Is he green? Is he gray? Is he the color of death? These are questions that did not have to be answered in black and white. And I give more to our imaginations, I think, to the film's benefit. So that's one issue. I think what Universal tried to do, I'm not the only, a million people have said this before. They saw Marvel, is that Marvel had these characters crossing movies and having a multi-cinematic universe. Universal began that. They truly did. It was the first one time ever it happened in film, was the fact that it all began with one movie, when Frankenstein met the Wolfman. The idea that both these characters existed in the same universe, in the same time period. It's not even clear what time period we're in. You're talking about Europe between the wars. Yeah, there's horses and carriages. There's isolated areas. It's not quite clear. Are we in the modern era? Even post-war Europe was not in very good shape. So the idea that Frankenstein could meet the Wolfman was amazing. Was a mind-blowing. It had never been admitted in any of the previous films that the monsters knew each other, or their person knew that both monsters existed in their reality. So you have that, and Universal said, we want to do this for a very good reason. I mean, I can't argue with that. The idea of bringing that to the modern day, since Marvel did it, and even Star Wars is doing it on the big and small screen. One of the problems is these are bad guys. The monsters are the villains. So you really would need something like a Van Helsing to be in a bunch of different movies fighting them all. I think the monsters would gang up and be heroes and be the stars of the films. That's not really how they are in the 30s and 40s. So what are you supposed to do? Who are they fighting? A monster who's worse than them? Who's that? Who's worse than Dracula, who kills people? So they immediately had that problem. And of course, the answer was first Van Helsing, Hugh Jackman, then whatever Tom Cruise's character is. I never bothered to learn it. They were the heroes and they were fighting the monsters. So that's a way to do it, but it really isn't what the original idea was. Both these things failed for reasons I will not bore you with. You can read my articles, read the many other articles, or a million YouTube videos like why the Dark Universe failed, why Van Helsing failed. They had their good points, but that was the idea. And also worth noting is that Universal had the copyrights of these character designs all this time. The flat-topped, bolt in the neck Frankenstein monster. Universal owns that, and no one else can use it. I think until it's coming up soon on 100 years or so, I believe, when they're going to lose it sometime soon. But the point is, they've had these character designs and have not used them. Even Universal knew there was no real way to make a flat-top Frankenstein movie in 1965, 75, 85. They themselves weren't sure how to use these properties. So it's a problem. I think it may never be solved. We'll see. I guess The Invisible Man is the one success story. Will there be more? I don't know. I guess I'm rooting for them, but they won't ever change the originals. You can't, no matter how many remakes of, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, there's still the original. It's still fantastic, and you're never going to change that. You're not going to hurt it, the 1974 version, by making new ones. So I have no problem with making new versions because the old ones will still be there on Peacock, on the DVD collection. So that's my take, if I didn't take too long.
I don't know if I just made Will smash his phone, but Will, if you're there,
I agree with a lot of what Jason said. I wanted a dark universe. I wanted to bring back these classics. I wanted Universal to reimagine and also give me what I wanted in all those fanboy moments. And it is my opinion that Tom Cruise should leave everything. That is just my opinion. And as soon as he was attached to it, I had to walk away. I think I may have even called or texted you that they've ruined all of my hopes and dreams. But I agree there. You can't recapture this magic. You can't bottle the electricity that's in the original Frankenstein. and try to redo it. So many people have tried, even using literally the same exact props and set pieces that have been rented out over the years, and you just can't quite capture that. So I don't want to try and see that. I haven't seen Invisible Man. I heard good things. I do want to give that a try. I don't think I'll ever watch the Mummy movie. From what I understand, they were trying to use the Jekyll and Hyde's Russell Crowe's Jekyll and Hyde character as the sort of Nick Fury to string everything together. And for everything that I could read, I didn't understand what he was stringing together. Like, are you bringing all these monsters together to like what? Like, why would you ever do that? Even as somebody who is torn between your own humanity and the monster inside of you, you should know better than to bring a bunch of monsters and put them in the same room. So, I didn't quite understand what they were going with, but I did want it. I thought Benicio del Toro, he was Wolfman remake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a perfectly fun jaunt. It gave me what I wanted to see in the Wolfman with some of the lore. Looking back now, I think the CGI is pretty bad, but they did have some practical effects in that too, which I applauded them for. So that was cool. Other takes on Dracula, and I kind of agree with the Hammer films are their own sort of. I enjoy them, but I have to completely separate them as a different studio. And a different thing altogether. They were doing their own thing, trying to recapture what Universal had, making their own way, and they are what they are. I mean, Christopher Lee is. I'll watch anything with Christopher Lee, so they had that going. I'm ranting because I just don't want to scream about Tom Cruise. But yeah, I would love to see this these worlds reimagined and revisited. But I don't understand, the Universal themselves put a bunch of these monsters together in a movie, and even then it didn't always make sense. So maybe learn from that.
I was asking myself a weird question, and I had an answer for it. So now I want to get your guys' takes on these things. When you discover, if you haven't grown up with an older property and you discover them more recently, and there's this amazing internet that you could look up background information on. You could look up, old quotes and secrets and how it was made. And like Will was talking about the architects, but pre-2000s, the internet wasn't that prevalent. And then I was like, how did we learn all this? And I was like, books and magazines. So did you guys, I don't know if you could remember anything, from the way back where something you might have looked up to learn extra stuff aside from what you just saw in the films, that because you wanted to know more, like what might have some of your sources been to read up on some of the secrets and the extra knowledge that you got from these movies?
Oh, well, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. No, it is books. My local library was a big part of my childhood. My mother was, very involved in our public library, and often they would have book sales to support the expansion that they were trying to do at the time. And I among other books, I would gravitate towards anything I could get that had horror. There's one book in particular that I got as a discarded book that was on the book sale for like $1, and it was called The Horror People. If I had it in front of me, I could tell you more about it. But I just remember it was The Horror People, and it started with, the first chapter is on the Cheneys, and then it just kind of goes through a lot of the Universal players, and then it goes into Hammer, and it continued on. But I remember I loved flipping through and looking at the photos and seeing these. It was also the first time I think I saw almost behind the scenes photos of any of these movies that I really loved, and that just it excited me to make me realize that yes, that is makeup, and the work it took to get that makeup to be that way, and the amount of time that they devoted to really figuring out what is practical. Why is Frankenstein's head the shape that it is? Well, because it's got someone else's brain mashed into this other person's skull. Like the cranium isn't going to work that way. So yeah, books like The Horror People, that really kind of that was my first look into the other side of it without just watching the movies.
And there's an old book that I remember as well. I think it's plural, Horrors! ! It's by Douglas Drake, I believe is the name. That was about more of a chapter each of kind of the folklore as well as the film versions of the monsters. Most of them, as you know, there's basically the vampire, as we know it, is Dracula. The Wolfman, we know it is Lawrence Talbot. Actually was created for Universal, not based on any existing literature or play like most of the others. So that's it was a very, from the early 70s, very cool look at a very serious look at the very well written and elegantly written about the folklore, the mythology, as well as and how did this appear on film up to that point, up to about 1970. But if I could mention to your larger point, where people did not know a lot about back behind the scenes, special effects, is the Universal tour. A lot of that job was explaining these things to people about how films were made over the years. Mm-hmm. And I really feel I was there long enough. I'm sure it's not quite as simple as this, but I felt it at the time that for a while you would say, how did they make the Red Sea part in the Ten Commandments? And they say, well, they took a block of gelatin and they cut it in half and they melted it and they reversed the film so it appeared to melt away from itself rather than back together. And this complicated process. Mm-hmm. And then after a while it was, hey, how did they make Van Helsing, have the castle explode? And I would go, they pushed a button. they had software and they did it in front of a green screen. Oh. And every story sucks. Every story is nothing. There's a green screen and a bunch of eyes on. I mean, after this, artistry at work here, but there's no fun of the practical effects, as we'll mention. They're so much more satisfying to see. So that it got kind of tiresome after a while to say, well, everything now is CGI. But the part of the tour was people didn't know. People could not just go to YouTube or go to the DVD, a director's commentary and watch the behind the scenes on the DVD. It was us. And it was a big responsibility. It's a whole different kind of audience now those tour guides have to deal with. I feel sorry for them.
Well, just to piggyback on that, I can't imagine someone walking up to me then and saying, listen, we're going to film The Invisible Man. Okay, cool. How are you going to do that? No, that's up to you. We want him to move around. We want him to be on. He's going to unravel the bandages, and there won't be a head. Oh, so puppet? No. We don't want a puppet. And so to just devise those sorts of things and come to that and all those effects and the effects from Frankenstein. I don't remember the guy's name, Jason. Maybe you know it, but. All of that equipment was just like the hobby of some guy, I think, that he just made all these cool things that didn't really have a practical place in the world other than looking cool. And so that's where the Jacob's ladders and all that other fun equipment in the lab comes from. And to find that person and rent that equipment to just to have the concept that, this needs to be something no one's ever seen before. So it should be something that doesn't really exist. I just think it's phenomenal.
There is a fun chapter in, I think it was If Chins Could Kill, one of the Bruce Campbell books, mm-hmm. where there was a part where I think there was a face melting scene or head melting. I don't remember now, but the FX guy locked himself in a hotel room for 3 weeks to figure it out and get it. And then they absolutely ruined the carpet in that hotel. It's hearing about that kind of thing is fun. Mine was Makeup Artist Magazine. Cause I've taught myself a lot of makeup, and every once in a while one of these magazines would have a nice retrospective and a flashback to not current stuff, but some of the more older things. And I never I kicked myself because I never really looked into it. But one of the stories would be well, Lon Chaney would just do so much of his own makeup, and he ended up stealing so many roles from Bela Lugosi because he could just make up himself and do more things than Bela could. There was a lot of anger between their families for that. But mine was through magazines more than books.
We're so spoiled now in terms of accessibility, and we have the entire, like, you finish watching a movie, you go on IMDb, and you read about it. You get all the, oh, did you know this? Did you know this? Like, that's how they did this. That, like, we're so spoiled. We're so spoiled nowadays. Like, I remember back when I was a kid, I had one issue of Wizard magazine, and like, I wasn't a big comic guy. Like, I collected cards and like random stuff, but like, I read that issue. I still have that issue, by the way. But like, I read it cover to cover, 50, 60 times just because it's the only thing I had. But like, it was so interesting. And like, that's how you got your insider information. It was a different time. It was different. And like, also one thing I want to point out, you mentioned, Jason, like, oh, they took gelatin and they melt, like, that. It's so cool for us to be able to sit here and be like, so that's how they did it. Can you imagine being them all the years ago thinking, oh God, we're melting Jell-O. Please just work. And then we have to present this in a major theatrical release that millions of people are going to see. And it's got to look believable. And like, I wonder if they were aware, like, oh, hey, and like the people who made Frankenstein, like, we're changing movies. We're about to change the world with this movie. Like, I wonder if that kind of stuff ever even like occurs to them, or if it's just like, no, we're making a cool movie about a guy who was made out of pieces and then we're zapping with some lightning, and it just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder. I think Universal kind of fell into the monster genre because they were not a prestige studio. They didn't have a lot of money. They lost control of the studio during the era of the monsters. As a matter of fact, he was that far in debt. So they struck gold with Dracula. I mean, I guess before the silent film with Hunchback and Phantom of the Opera, really Dracula was huge, and then they just kept making them. And eventually the other studios followed suit. I think some MGM or someone made Jekyll and Hyde. That's not Universal, but they just owned it the same way that MGM owned, like musicals. There was one genre they could point to that they really did own for. I would say. I mean, the DVD collection is 36 films. They see in The Creature from the Black Lagoon into the 50s. So certainly we're looking at 25 years. So that and that made a huge imprint on film forever, as obviously how it looked, how it was marketed, and in fact that the monsters could then join each other's films was a huge. And even that how a franchise kind of evolves is that you had. Eventually, the monsters kind of run out of steam and were becoming kind of laughable. So what do? You put Abbott and Costello in the film, or put them in Abbott and Costello, however you want to put it. And that stayed in the studio. Those were their two biggest moneymakers at the time, with Abbott and Costello monster films. And someone's like, they actually meet each other. Monsters played it straight. Abbott and Costello were the comic relief. And they made a whole bunch of movies of those that did very well. And then eventually you had the foray into sci-fi in the 50s with Creature from the Black Lagoon, which really isn't horror. It's outdoors, it's during the day, it's in South America. It's not what we think of as classic horror. And they made 3 of those movies, one of which was in 3D. So you can see it's amazing to draw a line from, you go all the way back to Phantom of the Opera, a silent film, up to Creature from the Black Lagoon, a full body suit. Never mind Lon Chaney making his own miraculous makeup, but that of someone in the complete suit, which was a big deal back then, a full rubber suit, a full mask. So yeah, Universal has a lot to. People may think of these films, maybe not us on this call, but dismissively as these sort of cheap monster films that are not scary anymore. But boy, they had a big effect on a lot of people and filmmaking itself.
I mean, they drove censors wild. Censors were different then, but there was so much that they weren't sure if this was going to fly with audiences, and then the audiences ate it up. But I mean, prior to Dracula, most what would be considered, horror or, supernatural, or it was always explained away. It was always Scooby-Doo at the end. There was some sort of human thing behind it, and it wasn't ever, necessarily supernatural, or it was a humanity thing. It was a deformity. A lot of early horror came right after World War I. You had all of these survivors of the war who, because of medical advances and how much medical science had changed at that time, that there were more people who had survived but were they had lost limbs, or they were disfigured, or their faces were horribly disfigured, and it sort of added this level of uncomfortableness to society, where now we have these people who fought in these wars, and they're here in the neighborhood, and they have to have these masks and things made to wear over the scars and things, and a lot of horror started from that. And so that's sort of, I think, where maybe Lon Chaney Sr. had devised that phantom look, is sort of from that. And I growing up watching documentaries and reading books about it, they often draw parallels to victims and survivors from World War I. But at the end of the day, that was a human, that was a man, that wasn't a monster who came into into your bedroom at night and sucked your blood. And then even just the sort of sexual connotation of this man came into my bedroom at night and sucked my blood. All of this, all of that just really, it shook audiences, and it did terrify them, and the world was completely different. So, there's for years the scene, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet, the scene where Frankenstein throws the girl into the lake, for years it was edited out that you never actually saw her hit the water. So they had to cut it, especially in European markets. They were like, no, we're not. Killing a child is crossing the line here. So I think to some degree they knew what they were doing. They knew they were pushing some limits. We could get into a lot with Bride of Frankenstein and what limits they were pushing there. But that could go on for a long time. So I think they knew. I think they knew exactly, especially I'm blanking. James Whale. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah, he for sure. I believe 100% he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly where he wanted to upset an audience and where he wanted to pull on heartstrings and things. And it's because of his dedication to that I believe we have so many of the tropes that we know in horror today, because he knew exactly what buttons he wanted to be pushing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The fact that Dracula's over. Dracula both begins and ends. The ending has been lost, this sort of epilogue. But the actor playing Van Helsing comes out and addresses the audience. The opening is still there, and at neither point do they say, "This didn't happen. This is not real." Quite the opposite. They kind of tease you with this is going to be scary. And the ending is, if you go home tonight and see something in the shadows, well, who knows what that could be. So the idea that at no point is Dracula supposed to be a hoax or a trick or a person in a mask like Scooby-Doo, like Will is saying, that was a big deal. This is at the end of the movie. It's like, no, this just happened. This is real. So we make up, you think of what that means to you as you go home tonight and are scared in the shadows. That was a very interesting. Film was so new back then. The idea that something was almost a documentary of this is just a true story. It took place in Europe and in London. So that was a very big deal, and something we don't, it gives us no thought at all today. I guess now with something like a mockumentary or like a Blair Witch Project, where you're like, wait, is this real? Is this, they portrayed all the marketing was like it was an actual event before they realized, okay, this is not real. So back then that was a very interesting choice to make. But it was like, no, there's no trick. There's no ending that's going to make everything okay. Dracula was real and he killed people, and then we killed him, and now it's over.
I worked at a warehouse for a while, and one of my coworkers, we were in the break room watching TV, and Terminator 2 was on, and she starts telling me, she goes, okay, back in my home country, we were watching this, and we didn't understand that it was like acting and a fake robot. We thought it was real, that there was actually a robot person running around killing people. I was like, and because at that, I was in my late teens, early 20s at the time, and I would wear a black jacket and sunglasses too often because I thought I was cool. And I go, is that why you didn't talk to me for 2 months? She's like, yes. She wouldn't talk to me because she thought I was Terminator. But yeah, it's still tough for some people to grasp the concept of like what is real and what's fake, and what does this convince me to do, or at least how to act around people and what to be cautious of. Before we move on, I guess, do either of you have like a favorite fact that you've learned, or a favorite how something was made or how something happened? Or I guess like from doing the tours, you could have like you learned a lot of stuff. But is there a favorite something that you picked up that you learned?
I'm trying to think everything. I feel like everyone knows so many of these facts these days, or they've read the books or watched the DVDs, which is great. I hope people do. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Is one of my favorite fact. One thing interesting is that Dracula being basically the fact that it was a new genre, basically, in terms of sound film. It was released on Valentine's Day. It was portrayed as a love story. It was. I mean, the poster talks about like a love that's ages old and thousands of years. If you think about it, he really is trying to just find a new bride.
Huh.
He has several of them, wandering around the castle. You see them, but he's, he has obviously this sexual. He's visiting her in the bedroom with Mina and Lucy and everything. So the fact that it wasn't like a Halloween film, because there was no Halloween movies, so it was released on Valentine's Day.
I didn't know that.
Will, do you have anything you've learned that was really like sticks with you as your favorite fact?
That's I'm never good at these questions.
Surprise.
I don't know that I have a favorite fact. My facts that I usually remember and retain for some stupid reason are all the really stupid things, like, oh, the boots were each 13 pounds. Like, woo, So I don't know that I would have a favorite fact. I usually just get caught up in the whole story and how cool the things were, that the road it took to get there as a whole always blows me away. So I don't think that I could pick one. It's interesting to me the concept that Universal wanted Bela Lugosi to be Frankenstein, and he was like, no, I'm not doing a part with no lines and a bunch of makeup. Like, I'm a star, So I just the concept of trying to imagine how drastically different, and in my opinion, maybe even a failure, Frankenstein would have been had he been in the role, and what would be different. Although then he was really the first, quote unquote Igor or Igor, because originally it's Fritz, not the Igor that we all first associate with. And really, I think he did so well in that role because Karloff fought for him to be paid more. So I think he just felt like he owed it to them, and he really delivered in that role. I'm rambling again, but so no, I don't think I have a favorite fact. I think it's just the really obscure, weird ones, and how everything ties together, and the road it takes to get from point A to the movies that I love.
And it's all that has led up to four dudes talking on an obscure podcast, before they talk about theme parks. So here we are, thanks, Hollywood. So we do have to, we're going to talk, because obviously can't talk to Jason Ginsburg without talking about his creation, his baby. We've talked with you about it before, Jason, with Fake Theme Park, which last time we talked with you, there was thousands of followers, which have grown even more since we chatted with you. Currently sitting at 13.7 thousand followers on Twitter, and then add another almost 7,000 on Facebook. What's going on with Fake Theme Park? We kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I figure you'll probably be able to say it better than any of us can. So what do you got going on?
Well, after about 11 and a half years of posting every single day on Twitter, and then for a good amount of that time on Facebook as well, I am ending the Twitter's longest running comedy project on March 5th of this year. It is finally coming to an end on both Facebook and Twitter. It's been a labor of love. It's been a good time, but all things must end. I'd like to end it while it is of still interest to people. I hate for it to kind of fade away when no one cares anymore, and I don't care anymore, and it kind of end. That seems very sad. So to end it while it is still fun for me, or there's still people engaging with me on on Facebook and Twitter, it is time for it to come to an end. So I am doing my interviews and podcasts like this one to break the news to everyone.
It has been a hell of a ride. I was trying to go back, like scrolling through the tweets, because like when you say tweeting every day for like, you're not exaggerating. Every day you have released some form of content. And I was going back trying to look for specific things, and it got to the point where Twitter would no longer refresh. It was like, nope, there's plenty here. You can look at the stuff that I've loaded for you. I'm not loading anymore. And it wouldn't let me go any further. I swear to God, that actually, I don't know if it was just my computer being a piece of junk, but Twitter stopped loading. So, I mean, first of all, I said it in pre-show. Congratulations. That is a ridiculous run coming from someone who has also been doing a thing for a very long time. I mean, we did it once a week, for X amount of years, and now we've been doing it once every other week. And even that's just exhausting, trying to come up with an hour's worth of content every 14 days.
It's gotten exponentially worse because we haven't gone to conventions to meet new people in 2 years.
Right.
So like that was usually the easy part of like, oh, I met Johnny Christmas. We'll talk to him in a couple months. And like, I haven't met anyone new to harass and ask to come on the show. So we have to go other places and try and find new ways, like someone's Grant.
Right. So we coming up on the 12 years, it all started, and we've most likely discussed some of this. It all started with the Twitter account. Did you ever foresee Fake Theme Park branching out? Because it started with the Twitter, it's branched out to Facebook. There's a YouTube channel. There's merch now. You can buy merch. You can buy Fake Theme Park merch. Did you ever foresee Fake Theme Park exploding to what it was? Was that ever in your grand design when you started that Twitter account all those years ago?
No, and let's mention the 2 books for sale on Amazon.
The books, yeah,
all your favorite, both the paperback and on Kindle. I thought it would either, I guess, one of 2 things. Either it would make me famous and get me writing jobs. The model back then, it seems so foolish now, but it was a really big deal at the time, was Shit My Dad Says.
Oh yeah, yep.
which was a Twitter account, then a book, and then a sitcom. And that to me was like, well, this actually can be done. It was a funny enough concept. I can see how just a dad saying funny things could be a sitcom, where an entirely fictional theme park might involve a great deal of money and a budget. And I know 2 studios are not going to make that make that sitcom, Universal and ABC. So yes, I thought it would either launch me to stardom, or I would get tired of it and it would just kind of fade away. And the fact that I just kept going in this sort of middle state, I was certainly flattering. People did engage with me and did want to talk to me and make joke back to me and ask me questions that I could then basically feed me a straight line and I could make a punchline out of it. And then the idea of bringing it to life by having not only 2 songs, but a music video of one of the songs, and I put them together, compile some of that into books as well. Yeah, it became its own little industry, and I'm very proud of it. But it really, after 12 years, I can say there's no money in it. So I'm looking to spend that time on other things. Again, it's been a great exercise in comedy writing. It's given me a chance to be on podcasts like this one. When I was in the Orlando Sentinel as well, I will be again apparently for the count ending, and I mean the print edition, not just online. I was actually in newsprint. I still have that copy. So it was a great opportunity to meet people and talk to people and be, to improvise in character on some of these podcasts and be completely bonkers. But I had no idea it would kind of just keep going for 10 plus years and getting sort of bigger, but not big enough to be like a job and not just sort of dying because I got tired of it and no one cared anymore. But it was just good enough to keep going, and people did keep engaging and are apparently going to miss it. From what I'm hearing from all my announcements, people are very sad, and that really it touches me, makes me feel good. I'm glad to see that it serves some purpose in people's lives.
It's your
Go ahead, Ox.
Your comment, like you had a specific term that really rings a bell, and it's like, well, I'm gonna coast along the middle ground. And I was like, that's, it kind of hurts, but it's kind of true. Whereas like when we started this, JR, myself, and our third founder, Justin, we didn't really know what we were doing. We just started trying things. And then a year later, like, well, let's talk to other people and let's, try reviewing a few things. We'll start going to conventions. We'll do, we get press passes for reviews, and there's enough listener downloads to keep us going. And there's enough people that would agree to talk to us to keep us going. But also, there wasn't a rocket ship taking us to the stratosphere. We're not getting invited to conventions or anything. And, so it's like, well, I think we brought this as far as we're going to bring it. So I really hear that.
And it will always exist. The podcasts are on demand as well. I guess anyone's wondering, I'm not like deleting the Twitter account. You can certainly scroll through, as far back as your computer will let you, apparently, and Facebook as well. But I will leave it up because there's no point in deleting it and just like it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
I may direct people to the books or to something so they can go somewhere else, maybe watch the music video. That too will exist forever. So I don't think that it was either one of us, in case you were needing any reassurance from me, was a failed endeavor to create something, to bring something into the world. It is that brings people joy, and bring yourself joy as well as the creator. But the fact that it meant something to other people, that is worthy in and of itself.
I have to interject. You saying like you won't delete it. Like I have to argue you can't delete it. I can't tell you how many times that your humor has been shown to me by people who know that I've worked in the theme park industry and still do, and gone, oh, will find this funny. That it's going to live on. It is its own. It is its own thing, and there's going to be people who will rediscover this years from now, whether it's directly from your page or a share or one of your books, and they're going. I look forward to all of the pop-ups and the resurgence of it, and how many times it comes back to me. And I almost didn't want to ever know you, because it's this thing of infamy for me. When I first started reading the tweets and Facebook, some of the jokes that you made or the posts that you had were hilarious, and others were just too true that they almost hurt.
Yeah.
And reading them, and I was like, I don't remember what the first one I read was, but I went, whoever is behind this is literally in a cafeteria right now at an amusement park tweeting these things. Like, I wanted to believe so bad that whatever this tweet was, you literally just witnessed firsthand in front of your eyes, and just changed the names to protect those that are innocent. There were times where I don't know what I don't think you know anything about me. We've just met on this podcast, but I started at our local theme park, and then I moved across the country to follow the chain, and I worked at another one in our family of theme parks that was drastically different. But all the bizarre and weird and wonderful was still there, even though the property was very different from the one I'd grown up in. And now I've moved back across the country, and I'm at a third property. And as someone who's in middle management, I'm in charge of all the entertainment at this property. And I have seen your posts and thought, that's hilarious. And also really sad, because it's a little too close to what I was about to create, and maybe I need to rethink this. So one, thank you, and two, I hope that you, and I think you do, but I think you should take great pride and honor in the fact that this, it may not have made money, but it is going to live on, and it's going to be very important to people who don't even know about it yet, and it will still be that way.
Well, first of all, Will, that's very nice to hear. I never get tired of hearing those sort of feelings expressed to me. Most of the time, people do like things and retweet things on Twitter, but it's silent. I'm a performer at heart and a writer, and to actually hear people laughing and talking about it, in my actual ears, not just a heart icon on a screen, means a lot to me. It really does. I will never get tired of it. So thank you for expressing that to me. And that's if I could say, that's a reason why people have asked me, now they know it's ending. Oh, is the park going to burn down? Is Princess Rainbow is going to be homeless, and Murph Gantley will go bankrupt, and the park will just will fall apart? And I think I don't want it to end like that. That's not even funny. I don't know what the joke of Murph Gantley, is a rich, horrible person, but they have him going bankrupt and living on the street or something. I don't believe the park will not have that fate. I'm not even sure I wanted actually to necessarily end with the end. Mm-hmm. If you think about some of your favorite TV shows, I'll try to name one, something like Star Trek, where it's just the show just stopped. They're still having adventures. Mm-hmm. It was a 5-year mission. Well, the first series was only 3 years. Well, they didn't. The last episode was at them going goodbye, America. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't know the characters didn't know they were done. So some shows do end. They very much with MASH. They the war's over and they all go home. But other shows, they're just going on. So I feel like the idea the park will still be there to give you comfort. Princess Rainbow will still be living in Rainbow Castle. Crazy things will still be happening. The idea that it's all going to burn down, and so it doesn't seem like the right spirit to me.
Right. Oh, I'm going to share. I want Hostile Takeover, new CEO, Maximilian Overstreet. The new CEO is crazy and has a tiger of his own, and despite all the signs, still does coke in your bathroom. I agree. I want it to live on. In my mind, that's where it'll go, maybe. But yeah, I hope. I'm glad to hear that. I don't want there to be an end. I want it to be much like the real theme park industry. There's changes. There's people that come in. There's new CEOs. There's new bosses, park presidents, whatever might change. But at the end of the day, it's still a theme park, and it's still wild and weird and wonderful.
As you're saying,
yeah. Please go on.
Even as you're saying, there's new CEOs and things go on, and rides come and go. There are still seasonal employees that will come back for 20 years, which means you will still have to load up the haunt actors back onto the prison bus to send them back home at the end of the season. And I'm going to reshare that every October. I'm not going to, just because there's no new tweets coming out doesn't mean it's not going to show up on my timeline in my memories. It's no, we're still going to send the haunt actors back to their prisons, and stuff like that. The only thing I might wish for is how can I observe Fake Theme Park and learn some kind of conflict resolution that Fake Theme Park's HR might have to deal with all the princess drama. And how could I use that in my own life?
Yeah, I'm not sure. HR is a pretty ineffective department at the park. I'm not sure. I mean, they may not be fully staffed. I think you go into the HR department, it's just raccoons running around.
So that one.
Yeah.
I will say, in discussing the impact of Fake Theme Park, and I'm pretty sure I pointed this out on the last time we talked with you, Jason, but it bears repeating in that our show, Alex pointed out, the listenership, yeah, it was enough to keep us going. We're not famous. We're not famous by any means. We've had less than the amount of times I can count on one hand the amount of times that people have come up to me hey man, I listened to your show, and be I don't know you personally. You don't feel obligated to listen to my show. But Fake Theme Park, at least the first time we talked, was one of the only times where people reached out to us to be yo, you got Fake Theme Park? And I was first of all, I haven't talked to you in 6 years. I didn't even know you listened to the show. How did do you even follow us? But they somehow saw, and they were how did you get Fake Theme Park? How did you know about them? And we're listen to the show. And it's one of the few times where that has happened. Is just, I think it speaks to, and it helps that a lot of people that I associate with, a lot of my closest friends, and also a lot of my friends that, again, I haven't talked to in a little while, I met working at local theme park. I only worked there for 2 years myself. A lot of people have much more experience, but even in those 2 years, like Will was saying, so many of those jokes just hit so close to home You get them, you understand them. It's that tight knit group that you don't really know about unless you're part of it. It's a monumental feat in creative humor, and I applaud you for it. Thank you for making it. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
I know it's nice. I'm pleased. It's nice to hear. I mean, that is sort of I meant this to be for the general public. Obviously, I wanted the widest possible audience because I wanted to get a TV show or make a lot of people laugh. And what it seems again and again, I've learned the niche is employees, current and former employees. Tag each other on Facebook and remark and then in the comments have a little conversation that I'm just sort of watching of like, remember August 2018, and like these inside jokes that I've triggered somehow that I guess I'm happy to be part of that. So apparently, yes, I've struck a chord as someone who worked at a park for basically 10 years, met my wife there. She was a tour guide as well. We met in the break room at Universal Studios Hollywood. She was just on a podcast with me recently, as a matter of fact, and she sort of helped the Times find me news stories, or craft jokes. I'll show her, go, is this funny? And she'll say, well, you haven't found, it's not the way you're saying it isn't funny. I know what you're trying to say, but rewrite it. She's been very helpful. She copy edited the books. So I meant it for the general public, but apparently the people that really get it, like you're saying, are theme park employees. And to be honest, look, I gave my last tour last time sitting on the tram with a microphone was spring 2008. So I'm becoming less and less qualified to make these jokes, to talk about what's going on. I don't have to deal with Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel and these new genie passes. That wasn't my world at all. So I feel like I maybe need to step aside because I can make some of the same jokes over and over again, but things are changing. It was fun doing it during the pandemic. I had all kinds of new jokes to do. It was quite a challenge, and I'm sure it was challenging for fans to go, what is happening? The parks are all closed around the world. What is Fake Theme Park doing? Well, we're closed too. But we're getting farther and farther away from my time there, and I feel like maybe a new generation should be the ones that take up the mantle and make fun of theme parks.
I very much appreciate the fact that, one, you work closely with your wife and she helps you with the jokes. This kind of ties in with something that I was debating pointing out, but I didn't know how sad I wanted to make everyone. In that, in my preparation for this episode and trying to come up with things to talk about and potential questions regarding Fake Theme Park and things like that, one of the first things I thought of was, obviously it's been a very difficult time. The last, it's almost 2 years now, especially for destination places like a theme park. I haven't been to a theme park in quite some time for obvious reasons. People, there's a pandemic. And I was like, I'll ask Jason about what it's like to have to come up with jokes, but staying cognizant of a pandemic and being sensitive to, but also trying to be funny. And then I pulled up my show notes from the last time we talked to you, and I realized that was still when the pandemic was happening. And I already asked you that. And it made me, I laughed at myself first. I was like, you idiot, you unoriginal loser. And then I got really sad because here we are a year and a half later, and we're still in the same boat. But
some of the best performing tweets were pandemic related. I have an archive. Twitter allows you to download your own tweets. I have a spreadsheet. I do look to my own past for inspiration, or occasionally if something does well, why not repeat it a year later? Who's going to remember? But looking back at I can filter by tweets, retweets, and likes, things like that. And it's amazing how many of the most almost obvious, simple jokes about the pandemic are at the top. Even one of the biggest ones, I made a whole PowerPoint because I had all this time because we didn't have time of, as it got closer and closer as the pandemic was sort of going away as we thought. So I made a little PowerPoint called Reopening, a Terrible Idea. Yeah. A bunch of slides, how we're going to deal with food, how we're going to deal with the rides. And that is like top 10 content of all theme park employees. Again, most of these employees, not just regular people going, yeah, we don't want to reopen.
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't. I was asked as part of my job during while continuing to work in a theme park. I was asked to put together an exercise about what would our Fright product, our Halloween product, look like if we were to open and be able to, safely operate. And so I was given this PowerPoint. I was asked to do notes, and the last slide, I literally put, just don't.
All the stuff that I just said, just don't do it.
Yes, thank you. If I may, I'm gonna abuse my time with you. I have two things. Number one, at some point in my career in theme parks, it was my job to work on the park map. So I have to tell you, the one thing I've always wanted is a fake theme park map that had, the advertisements and the key and all of the things that you can't actually follow the map because it's impossible. And they never quite line up and they never quite work, but somehow they really got the details on that tiny insignificant building over there in the north end of the park. So working with our one of our designers that does all of the park maps for every property so that they look the same, I always thought of Fake Theme Park and to own my own map on the wall as though I had went and just framed it like a park fanatic. So that's one thing I've always wanted. But also, I have a question for you. I would have loved Fake Theme Park to take off and be a show or a movie like your dream was. Had that happened, inevitably there'd be a moment where there would be a creator cameo. What would your creator cameo be, or would you be a regular on the show?
What a question!
I don't know. I think excellent question and statement. Before that, I don't know. There's not really a part for my age, which will not be spoken on this podcast, or my type. You can find photos of me online if you want. But I mean, Jimmy Jaguar would be easier. I'd be in the costume. That's one thing that I can do, and just be pantomime. So many of the characters, the princesses are so important. And I couldn't play them. And then Murph Gantley, I think you'd want an actual old cranky guy to play that role. You wouldn't want me in old person makeup. So those are the best characters are those. Next up, I can be Jimmy Jaguar, I guess. Although Captain Lightning is possible. Again, I'm not sure I can play a superhero, but a kind of sad, older superhero who believes in conspiracy theories and is sort of taking patriotism too far and jingoism. That's a fun character too, who you just see his face. I'm not sure I could play that. I'm not sure I have to build for that, but maybe that's part of the fun. So yeah, the fact that it would maybe eventually be its own attraction at a park, the way that things eat themselves, like Jurassic Park is a movie about a theme park, and now a theme park has a ride based on, that's what is real anymore. So it'd be something like that. It would be an attraction in a park based on Fake Theme Park. Yeah. As for the map, by the way, I have had the same feeling. I have looked into it. I've done some preliminary work on it. I've had to reach out to other people to help me. The two songs, someone composed them. I wrote the lyrics, but I can't write a song. The music video, of course, inquired a lot of people as well as an actor to play the princess. The map is tough. It has to be like almost like Where's Waldo, with so much going on that there's a lot of design for me. You're asking a lot of the artists. You also, the ROI of this, how much money is it going to cost to make something? And it's just, again, something for fun for 18 people to put on their wall and me, 19 people. So, yeah, I hear you. I'd love to bring it to life somehow, but it's a huge, to make it really funny, visually funny, that's a lot to work.
Oh, to make the real map was like, it every week just felt like a year of my life being eliminated for the real park maps. So I hear you 100%. I know that the designer who works on our maps for our particular theme park chain, I think he'd be perfect for you, right up your alley with this from his company name and all. But I digress. But I don't blame you for never having done it. Just having worked on a real park map. I've run out of triangles and circles. We need another shape to identify this food unit.
The trade secrets that you never think about.
I would like to brag for a moment because I believe I might be the only person to own Fake Theme Park books autographed and signed by Jimmy Jaguar, Princess Rainbow, and Murph Gantley.
Damn.
Yes, I remember. I remember not doing it, just seeing them. Obviously, I had no hand in that. I didn't sign anyone's name.
Obviously.
So I will be taking pictures of those and
yes.
posting
So
them on our page. Oh yeah, no. One of the, I think it was either Murph or Princess Rainbow who added, "I better not see this on eBay."
Oh man.
I just was mentioning that one of the last things I'm doing before the end, because once March 5th hits, I don't want to do, the idea of like, can I make a map afterward? No, it's March 5th is ending or it'll never end. But I finally, the idea of, hey, I can actually design a few small things through Redbubble that does all the work and sell some merchandise. So if you are, there's a few things up there now, more designs could come. I do have 6 more weeks, but some things say Fake Theme Park, some have Murph Cantley's name on them, Princess Rainbow's name on them, with some jokes. So people are interested in owning something physical, not a joke, a real thing you'll get from Redbubble, and small amount of money will go to me. That does exist. So yeah, just Google it, or I'm sure I have the link somewhere on the site. But it is now my part of Redbubble.
It's one of those.
Go
ahead again. It's one of those things where you say like, if this has given you some joy over the years, it's been for free, and if you can pay it back, you just go for it.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
I think I'd almost prefer the books. If people get the book, the books really do give you something. And then it's a bit silly to have a shirt that says Fake Theme Park or Princess Rainbow for President. But if you had to pick something and throw a little money, that I would appreciate it. But the books really do have a lot of value because it's not only the best tweets, but also original content as well. Things are just too long for a Twitter thread or a Facebook post. So there's some stuff on there you will not find anywhere else, if that appeals to you.
Jason, I have to say once again, congratulations. Alex, I imagine we're pretty over on time, yeah?
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
okay.
well, I mean, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because we got to chat about some rad stuff, but the amount of time and effort and originality that you have put into this, what started out as just a Twitter account, and now there's even just looking at the images you've created, the new theme park ticket process. I got mad looking at it because it seems, I feel like I've dealt with that at a theme park, and then trying to make sense. It's just the effort that you've put into this. And like you said, there's no money in it. You do this in your own free time. It takes a lot to do that for so long. The audience you've built, I'm psyched to see it. I see a lot of people when I look at your account on Twitter. It's like followed by like 12 of my friends. It's just great. Thank you for doing what you did for so long, and congratulations on everything. March. What did you say? It was March 5th.
March 5th. It's going to be Saturday. Okay. I meant, do you have the tweet? Do you have the final posts like ready to go, or are you still kind of fine tuning them? I'm still fine tuning them. It's such a big deal, and I don't want to end it on a sad note that I'm not quite sure what the final one will be, but the general lead up to, I got some ideas. Excellent.
Do you have plans like once you're done, and after like once March 6th and 7th rolls around, are you just gonna like take a vacation and breathe and like not have to schedule any tweets, or is this time you can dedicate to your life, or is there new projects ready to go on your schedule? Yeah, I've always been doing things on the side. I write on the side and do some comedy videos here and there. I was trying to get into TikTok, but it's hard while doing this at the same time. I've actually written something, web series, and I'm pitching things around anyone who will listen to TV shows and movies. I wrote a film that actually did come out. It's on streaming now, called The Sorcerer Beast, one of several films in this adventure series that I was hired to write. They're not my idea. Someone actually came to me to write these low-budget fantasy movies. First one has the voice of Corey Feldman and Jeffrey Combs from Star Trek, as we were talking about. So I have more time to devote to that. I wasn't not doing anything on the side, but it was taking up part of my day. So to have some of that time back, again, not just to schedule and to write, but to talk to people to see what people were saying and to talk, engage them. So it was kind of an all day thing. Even though I was on vacation with a smartphone, I would just look and see what's going on. So now that it'll be over, I'll have more time to devote to the other kinds of writing and comedy. So yeah, that won't end. They'll just have more time for it. I imagine most people have already Googled it by now, but if people wanted to see what we've been talking about, we've talked about the Twitter.
But we also mentioned the books, we mentioned the merch, and anything else that you might want to get people's eyes on. If people wanted to see more of your stuff, Jason, where could they go to do so?
My website is my name, jasonginsburg.com. I'm sure you'll see it visually on the web on this podcast site, but it is URG, like a town, jasonginsburg.com. If a few of the people from Fake Theme Park would follow me on Twitter, that would be great. It's not quite the same. I try to be funny, but I also tweet about things like football, so be prepared for that. That's just at Ginsburg. I got on Twitter so early that I got the last name, Ginsburg. So that would be something. And Sorcerer Beast is on all kinds of streaming things, Tubi and Vudu. I think it's eventually going to be on Amazon Prime Video as well. But it's a part of the Age of Stone and Sky, the first of this saga of movies to come out over the next decade, apparently. Independent. Yes, my name is on it, the Sorcerer Beast. And that's pretty much all I can think of at the moment.
Excellent. All right. I have to get sappy and I have to say thank you, because this has been a blast. Jason, you have always been so kind to us in the times that we've talked. And also after we talked, you've always been so good just posting and saying, hey, go listen to this thing. And it's always in character, which is just great.
That's my favorite part. It's like we're posting our episode and then Jason will share it, be like, listen to a madman rant for 40 minutes, something like that. Or like what these men are saying may not be true.
I don't exist in the Fake Theme Park universe, so they just think I'm some random person invoking their name.
It's been a lot of fun chatting with you. So not only thank you for making I just said Fake Theme Park, Fake Theme Park, and all that you've made, and but also for coming on, giving us hours and hours of your time to chat with us on our show. It's been a total blast getting to know you better and chatting with you over the last couple of years. I'm glad you've been able to stay healthy throughout all of this garbage. I hope you continue to stay healthy, and I'm excited to see what's next. Congratulations.
Thanks very much, and to you as well. That 10 years of the podcast. Obviously, we commiserate on the same issue of what it's like to end something so meaningful to us. But it's a great accomplishment. Plenty of podcasts get started up by schmucks, probably someone like me, that just fade away and come and go. And then you kept it up again without going out and meeting people during the pandemic, and still keeping it going every other week, which is that's just 25, 26 of them a year. That's very impressive. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Will, I love you. You're one of my favorite humans in the world. I have to get savvy about you too, but thanks for coming.
I wanted to say, Jason, thank you. I applaud you for leaving us wanting more, and I'm sad that OMV is ending and that we'll never speak again. But yeah,
it's weird to be sad publicly, but I do relish the opportunity to thank the people who have stuck with us and who have helped us along throughout the last 10 years. Jason, we've known you for 3 of those 10 years now, which is a damn long time. And Will's been coming on to us with the very beginning. I still have the blooper saved on my computer of Will opening the loudest bottle of seltzer in the history of the world. I cannot believe, and he was doing everything he could to open that bottle of seltzer as quietly as possible, and it just exploded. It's unbelievable. Deep cuts that no one has heard except for the 3 of us. But this show was a good excuse to hang out with my friends, and it kind of spiraled into 10 years of craziness, meeting insane people, and it's been awesome. So Will, thank you for always coming on and helping us when we asked, and because I know you're busy as hell, especially during the spooky time, which is the time we ask you to come on. So your contributions have been, I can't begin to state how important they've been. So thank you for always coming on with us, man. It's, again, love you to death. You are essential to this show.
Well, I've been honored. I love you guys. And when this show ends, it will, in my mind, go off into the distance in the sun to the Sad Hulk theme song.
Oh, man.
with
Was that
Droopy
your
Dog
first?
narrating.
Was that your first episode, Will?
No, it couldn't have been.
I think it might have been, yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, we were. Yep, that was back in my parents' basement in probably 2012, 2013. That was the good old days. But all right.
Hulk wouldn't like when this episode ends. Can't even do the Droopy Dog anymore.
And then he hulks out. Oh man. Okay. It's time to end. That's going to do it. Again, Jason, Will, both thank you so much for coming on. I don't have much else. I guess I'm going to end it. So that's it for this week's episode. Until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
For my last time, I'm Will.
I'm Jason.
And this has been episode 443 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you liked that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.